Let me reintroduce Jason Romano, our guest in studio, a former ESPN producer, Mike and Mike in the Morning, and the author of Live to Forget, and the host of the Sports Spectrum podcast that I know he's enjoying doing, and hosting a media and broadcasting webinar tomorrow to share your knowledge, Jason, of 17 years at ESPN?
Yeah, 20 years in the business, 17 at ESPN, 3 years here in the Capital Region. So, yeah, it's been a great run.
How's the book gone for you?
The book's doing well. It's interesting. It's a brand new experience for me. I've never written a book, so I didn't know what even the word "well" means, but it's been good. I mean, especially when I go and I speak and I share my book and the story, and I see people respond. That's when you can really tell.
They buy it and they read it.
Exactly, and they can relate to it, and they can understand how difficult it is to forgive sometimes.
And then the podcast, you really have. You really have enjoyed that end of it, haven't you?
I love it. I mean, it's funny. I was so sort of apprehensive to leave ESPN in the first place. And then when they called me and asked me, Sports Spectrum called me and said, we want you to host and produce and do everything but start a podcast. And I said, you want me to host it? I haven't really hosted anything in 20 years. And they said, no, you've worked with the best of the best at ESPN. You know how to interview people. Try it. So I was a little apprehensive about it, but I have had a blast. And we've done 102 episodes now, and we just hit 200,000 downloads actually today. So it's been a really cool thing to be a part of and to be able to talk to guys and girls that I've admired from afar. I had Jenny Finch on last week, the softball legend, and we had Kirk Cousins just a couple weeks ago, and Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, and got to kind of go deeper than just the people that you see on TV. We go deeper. We find out their story.
Right. A lot of these conversations obviously are faith-based. These are athletes or people of prominence in the sports world that lean on a higher power, as many of us do in our own personal lives, and it brings out, kind of the personal side of these people we just see on TV all the time, which I think is very cool. And I think is the great thing about a podcast. You talk about the challenges maybe of having never hosted a radio show before, but podcast to me is you have a conversation with somebody. Yeah. And even in our everyday lives, we ask questions and we're curious by nature. So that to me, the forum of a podcast is so great for that.
That's what I've really discovered is, because I'm just an inquisitive person anyways. If I was here and not doing your show, I would still be asking you guys tons of questions. I'm just curious. So to be able to put that into play in a podcast has been a lot of fun. And honestly, being able to develop my listening skills, which you guys know in broadcasting is vital to be a good listener. And it's weird to say that because you're not talking when you're listening. But to be a good listener and listen to what these people are saying and the stories that they're telling, that's been a real fun part of it, too.
You're from Ravenna. How did you end up a Cowboys and Celtics fan?
That's a long story. No, it's funny. My dad is a Giants fan. Yep. He's a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and he's a Boston Celtics fan. So I followed in his footsteps as a Celtics fan. But otherwise, my two brothers and myself, we all retreated to different teams in the late 70s, early 80s. Dallas was the team, America's team, and always on either against the Giants or the 4 o'clock game after them. So I followed the team with the star from a very early age. And then the Mets, Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden, when they came on the scene in 83 and 84, I was a 10-year-old kid, and it was unbelievable what they were doing, and I just gravitated to them right away.
Celtics winning last night, go up 3-2 in their series against Milwaukee, and they're so shorthanded. They got Marcus Smart back last night, and he was a difference maker. Yes. But I've got a love fest going on with Brad Stevens.
He's so good.
I just think he's a heck of a basketball coach. Looks like a young kid over there on the bench, but he commands and gets results.
You cannot deny the effect that this man has had on the Celtics, because every single time they lose a player, they still compete. They may not win the game. Even the other day when they lost Game 4 to Milwaukee, they were down 20, and I was ready to turn the television off. And they came back, and really they were up 1 with 40 seconds to go. And I'm like, how are they doing this? And it's you have talented players, but Brad Stevens knows how to get the most out of these guys, and he's so good. I'm convinced. I'm not being biased here. I think he's the best coach in the NBA. I really do.
Disagree.
I don't think anybody else can. You have Greg Popovich still and others. But I think Brad Stevens has surpassed them all with what he's done this year.
How far can this team realistically go, though, in your mind?
Not far. I think they'll probably, if they can beat Milwaukee, which is still not a given. Milwaukee's given them a big run for their money. I think they can close it out tomorrow night in Game 6. But Philadelphia just seems like they are all systems go. Everything is running perfectly for them. I think Philadelphia is probably going to the finals. I mean, it's hard to beat LeBron, and I get the Cavs and their aura, but Philadelphia is...
They could do it. I really do think they could do it.
I really do. If they can just forget that they're young and just play ball, which they did in the first round against Miami, they got so much talent. This Philly-Boston rivalry is going to be a lot of fun for many years.
How surprised were you when you heard Des Bryant was out in Dallas?
A little surprised. It's interesting, though. As a fan, I loved what Des brought to Dallas as a player. I mean, he was so talented, maybe the most talented wide receiver Dallas has ever seen. Maybe not the best. Michael Irvin's probably the best. But nobody could do what Des did from a physical standpoint and the way that he would just box guys out and catch the ball. But he has a little bit of an attitude, he's a little bit of an enigma, and he also has had a lot of injuries. In the last 3 years, he hasn't had over 1,000 yards receiving. And he's 29, and the money he was making, it made sense. So I think it's interesting. I'm actually proud of the Cowboys in this sense, that they're actually making a good business decision here and not hanging on to guys a little too long like they used to back in the day.
What do you want to see them do in the draft?
I mean, they have to get a receiver. That's my number one thought, is you got to take a guy, and you could get that guy in the second round. Yeah. I like Ridley a lot from Alabama. If he can fall to the Cowboys at 19, I think he'd be great. But Dallas also has some issues in the front line, on the defensive line, that they need to address, and certainly in the cornerbacks position. So skill position wise, though, if you got the right skill players, the defense can be kind of hidden a little bit with a dominant offense, which Dallas did a couple of years ago with Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott. So hopefully, I think they need to replace Dez. That's the number one priority.
We are tying with Jason Romano in studio with us. He'll be also on the Levac show, Gaza, Levac and Gaza this afternoon. You're going to be speaking with the Times Union later today as well, talking about the hosting of this media.
And he's on Forum, Raj.
Well, I forgot all about and he saw our new digs over there, the brand new studio.
I mean, there wasn't a speck of dust anywhere. WNYT, you know what I'm saying?
Give us time.
Yeah, give us time. We will mess that up in no time. We'll throw something in there, I can guarantee you. I got to ask you, this new show, Get Up.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts there? Now you got Golic and Wingo, and they're on before we are now here on 104.5 Team ESPN Radio, and then Greeny goes out on his own. There was a lot of hype leading up to it. It just launched a couple of weeks ago, so we're still in the early stages yet. I watch it. What is your take as a former ESPN producer of 17 years? What's your take on Get Up?
Yeah, I mean, they got a lot invested in that show, certainly with their personalities and Beadle and Jalen and Greeny. It's in New York, so it's in a location where they can probably get more guests, more high-profile people. I know Greeny lives down near New York, so that's very convenient for him. I don't know. The side of me, there's a side of me that just wishes Mike and Mike never broke up.
No question.
It really does. I mean, I loved working with those guys. I loved listening to them when I wasn't working with those guys, and I just thought they had something that was very difficult to find in this business. You guys know this. It's hard to find something that just meshes and gels so well, and they had it, and it's gone. So you move on, you move forward. And
was that an ego thing? Was it just Greeny wanted his own show? What was the break? Why did they break up?
I think like any long marriage, sometimes that happens, and I think they both wanted to I don't know this for 100% fact, but I think they wanted to kind of try their own thing. I know Greeny was very excited about the possibility of working on his own and kind of doing his own thing. And I know Golic loves the mornings and loves his show, and I think he's pretty happy where he is.
Yeah.
Trey's great. I mean, Trey used to fill in for Greeny all the time when I was producing on the show, and so it makes sense. I agree. If you listen to Golic and Wingo, it's very similar to Mike and Mike. It's just not Mike and Mike.
Yeah.
And it's good, but it's not Mike and Mike. And it's the same. Get Up. You watch Greeny, and it's Greeny, but it's not Mike and Mike. So I miss the Mike and Mike dynamic for sure. But I hope they both have success. That's really all you can wish.
Funniest on-air personality at ESPN?
Who is? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I mean, we're looking at a TV with Stephen A. Smith. I mean, he's not funny to be funny, but when you watch him, you just have to chuckle. I mean, the man is just so intense and outlandish in the way that he says things. I love Golic, though. Like, Golic would just stomp on a granola bar for fun and then pick it up and eat it to gross out Greeny, and that was just hilarious to me. So the things that Golic did, and he did it intentionally to be funny, but he also did it because that's who Golic is. He just doesn't care. And I loved working with him too. He was hilarious.
All right, the number 2 pick, Giants, tomorrow night. What's your gut tell you right now as we get set for the draft?
I mean, everybody, and I've been reading a lot of mock drafts lately. We had Daniel Jeremiah on the podcast recently from NFL Network, and they're all pointing to Barkley. They're all pointing to the running back because of the talent level, and they're pointing to Ezekiel Elliott 2 years ago, and you can't pass up that. But they can get a running back in the second round, the Giants. They can get somebody even in the third round that could be just, in my opinion, just as effective. I tell you, I agree. Gary Myers was on with you guys earlier, and he's seeing a decline in Eli's skills. So am I. I mean, the last 2 years, Eli has been good, adequate, but it's not Super Bowl champion good anymore. And I don't care if you give him a ton of weapons. I'm just not sure he's still that guy. So I'm looking for the future here. Like, he's 37. You have no backup plan. I think you should take a quarterback. I don't think they will, Roger, but I think they need to think about seriously taking a quarterback at number 2 or trading down and getting a quarterback at 4 or 5, something. And
tomorrow you're looking forward to the media and broadcasting
Yeah, so we're doing a webinar.
This webinar
is a
tomorrow,
whole new
right?
thing. Welcome to 2018, right? You can do a webinar. So I'm actually going to
How is that going to work?
So the way that works is if you have an interest at all in the broadcasting or media industry, it doesn't have to be sports, just anything in regards to broadcasting or media, I'm doing this webinar, and I have these, 17 years at ESPN. I believe there's 5 essential things that people need to know to either get their foot in the door to start in this business, or if maybe they're looking for a career change, or maybe somebody's been in the business, but they're at a small station or just kind of figuring out what's the next step. That's what I'm trying to do. I really just want to give back, Roger, and use the experience that I've gained over the years to help. So they can go into this webinar, and it is at 8:30, so it's during the draft. So if you're a sports fan, forgive me, but it's going to be replayed, and it's something that I think can help a lot of people. And the information is just on my Twitter page. You can go right to my Twitter page, and it's right pinned at the top.
People know how to multitask. We have multiple screens everywhere now. It's on the phone. It's on your iPad. You can do the draft in a webinar.
Set your alerts on your phone, right, Chris?
Exactly. There you go.
So I'm not so good multitasking, but I'm getting older.
That's all right.
I retweet really well, though.
That's good.
Listen, that's for sure.
That's good.
Hey, always a pleasure spending time with you, my friend.
Check out the book. Good Father's Day gift. Month and a half away. Live to Forgive.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
Jason Romano from Ravenna here with us in studio on Big Board Sports and 104.5 The Team.